I take it silence means that we don't. Let's progress to item 3, minutes of the previous meeting, which I think have been circulated. I have no comments to make on them. Does anyone else have any comments to make on them? Does anyone have anything to add to those minutes, or shall we decide that they are a correct record of what took place?
I think we take them as a correct record, Chair.
Okay. Members content with that?
Yeah.
Right. Let's briefly pause for a moment to look for Councillor Maxfield, who I can't see.
She is waiting in the attendees, Chair. She's just come in. If the host can let her in, please. There we go.
So again, I can't do that, can I? I'm not the host. I
No,
can't.
no.
Again, I can't see anyone.
Yeah, she's disappeared from the waiting room, Chair.
Right.
She hasn't appeared in here yet.
Well, maybe she's encountering some of the problems I did. I don't know if anyone else had this. When I tried to sign in before, it said internal server error, and it wouldn't, and it just all collapsed in a hideous heap. Well, I think let us progress and hope that Councillor Maxfield can join us in due course. So let's progress to item 4, former bus depot on Liverpool Road. Turn to our officer. Do we have an update on this? Anything to add to the report that's in front of us?
No, we don't. We do have a speaker on this item.
Oh, right.
Who is in the...
Yes, Mr. Nutter. Is he with us in the waiting room?
He is, yes, I believe.
Yes, and he is appearing. Can you hear me, Mr. Nutter?
I can. Can you hear me?
I can now. Yes, that's fine. So let me just go through the speaking protocol. So you have 5 minutes to address the committee. They'll be timed by our clerk, who will give a verbal warning when 4 of those minutes have elapsed. At the end of the 5 minutes, that's your sum contribution to the meeting this evening. And so it's on those terms I invite you to address the meeting when you're ready to do so.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, everyone. It is evident from the report that there are numerous positives which justify approving the proposed reuse of the former bus depot for a gym. They clearly include things like securing significant investment in the regeneration of a vacant gateway site on one of the main approaches to the town centre, providing an important leisure use that's highly accessible by foot and located close to existing bus stops, enhancing the range of facilities within the heart of the local community, and certainly from JD Gym's point of view, securing an award-winning gym operator who has targeted Newcastle for some time as a preferred location. And I think on that basis, Chair, I think it's common ground that the proposed use is more than acceptable in this current location. However, you'll note from the report, we do have one problem. The application site currently benefits from a right-hand turn for buses wanting to access the site when heading north. JD Gym simply wanted to use this right-hand turn for cars accessing the new gym. As highlighted by the case officer, the Highway Authority have a problem with this, not because the right-hand turn into the site is anyway unsafe, but because this will potentially impact on future plans that they have for the redesign of the Sainsbury's junction to the south. To address this, we did propose to move the right-hand turn further north to avoid any conflict with the Sainsbury's junction. However, the Highway Authority is simply reluctant to sign this off until their own design work is complete. The problem for us and JD Gyms is that these works have been delayed and there's no firm timescale or commitment, so we are simply left hanging. I know some of you will point out that those heading north could drive further along Liverpool Road, then do a U-turn, then head south and access the site via a left-in only solution. In fact, I think the report before you alludes to this. However, I would question how it is safer to force people to drive further north, then do a U-turn, rather than just allowing them to turn right into the site via a dedicated right-hand turn lane. Since the report was published, we've received a letter from JD Gyms stating unequivocally that a right-hand lane must be provided or the proposal will be unviable. In choosing the site, they have carefully assessed where future gym members will come from, and it is anticipated that in the evening, a lot of members will be leaving work in the town centre or coming from other major employers and educational facilities, most of which are concentrated to the south of the site. JD Gyms have driven the alternative route 2 weeks ago and believe that it will put a number of gym members off having to turn back on themselves when they're on their way home. Furthermore, it would appear the Highway Authority have a strategy to close all of the gaps along Liverpool Road, which means that there's no guarantee in the future that the alternative now promoted within the report will actually remain. Therefore, the recommendation before you today is bittersweet for us. On the one hand, it confirms that the use is acceptable, which is important when we are looking at alternative uses for the future occupation of the building. On the other hand, we stand to lose the proposed operator because of the inability to allow vehicles to access the site when heading north. We've spent a lot of time and effort proving that a right-hand turn facility can be provided and is safe. This would appear to be common ground again. However, because of unknown improvements to the Sainsbury's junction, for which there is no committed timescale, the significant investment by JD Gyms in this vacant gateway site will be lost. On this basis, Chairman, I would urge you and members of the Planning Committee to reconsider the recommendation to impose a condition restricting any right-hand turn movement into the site at a time of such uncertainty and allow this development to proceed. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Nutter. Before I open this to debate, and I think what Mr. Nutter is addressing is recommendation 15, I'll call condition 15 in the recommendations. I'll just ask our officer if she wants to comment on what she's heard.
Yes, I just want to add to what has been said about the Highway Authority's concerns. They have a plan to carry out highway improvements. They're proposing to provide a right-hand turn into Enderley Street from the A34 at the signalised junction, which serves Sainsbury's and Enderley Street, and they're proposing to extend the right turn filter lane into Sainsbury's, which could be affected by this proposal for the right-hand turn. What we can't say, the Highway Authority can't advise, is that the right-hand turn is compatible with the highway works that they're proposing to undertake, and therefore highway safety benefits. The right-hand turn into Enderley Street is a measure to give HGV drivers an alternative to get to Brampton Industrial Estate. At the moment, they're driving along inappropriate residential streets and causing highway safety concerns. So the concern of the Highway Authority is that what is proposed may not be compatible with their broader strategic highway safety improvements, and therefore, as your officer isn't in a position to recommend approval for that right-hand turn. There are alternatives, has been mentioned. There is a turn slightly further along in a northerly direction adjacent to the KFC, so I think that is approximately about 200 metres further north along the A34, and then obviously there is the Rycroft roundabout. So there are all alternatives. Clearly, that is not what the end operator considers is acceptable to them, but that is all that your officer can recommend at the moment to avoid any jeopardisation of that wider highway safety improvements that are proposed by the Highway Authority, which have yet to be finalised in terms of their design.
And am I right in thinking that the speaker was correct in saying that there is no timetable, no published timetable for these works?
It is correct. With the Highway Authority haven't designed this. They're intended to do the works as soon as possible. That their programme of works has been affected, as many construction activity, by COVID-19 and the restrictions that are in place. So it's delayed everything for them. But my understanding is that they are intending to do the works as quickly as possible. I think they are in the process of programming the works, but there's no dates as yet.
Okay, thank you. So I think most members will probably feel that this is the issue things turn on. I can't personally see any other substantive issues, but I'm willing to listen to people who say there are. So do members wish to comment on what they've heard so far?
Mr. Chairman.
Councillor Williams.
Thank you. This is not in my ward, it's just over the board in the town ward. But it's been a sorry state of affairs at that junction, the design of that junction, from the word go from Sainsbury's. Sainsbury's did pay for all that work to be done when they put in for a planning application to the said stores there now. Firstly, the bus stop outside the development is redundant because the buses won't stop there. They pull into Endley Street and then turn right, sharp right, into the old Liverpool Road where there's a bus stop. They wouldn't stop there because they said the heavy goods vehicles would endanger the bus driver when HGVs have to pull it right behind them. Whatever argument that is, they won't not use that bus stop. Also, pedestrian crossing on across Endley Street is not there. We wanted it for years. Really dangerous. So they want a design. They want a better outcome than what we started off with. Personally, I've got no problem with this development going in with a right-hand turn. If you go on the Google, there is space there where people come down the A34 coming south and then do a U-turn to go down Ashfield Near Road, or they go down to the roundabout at Nunton Lane. Now, there's room in that junction, and buses used to stop there with halfway across the road, and that was dangerous. But I suspect we're looking at cars, residents that are going to use this facility. So it'll be one majority, about 99% will be cars. And there's enough space, depending on how many cars, of course, that are coming up, going north and then turning right. But, Mr. Chairman, I propose to get on with this development. It's needed, and it's a redundant building. It'll be a cleaner environment. We won't have the buses revving and put all the black smoke we used to have and all the complaints we used to have with the buses backing onto the A34. So as far as health and safety, I think it'll be a positive move. It's just the problem where highways haven't got their act together and talking about as I've said, the crossing at Endley Street and that bus stop. That's just stop the background to it. Sainsbury's paid for it. They want the bus stop there, but the buses won't stop there because the drivers say it's too dangerous. But I propose to let the development go ahead with the right-hand turn. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Williams. Councillor Jones, I think, speak. Need to unmute yourself, Councillor Jones.
Sorry. At the risk of irking Councillor Williams, I would like to propose that we accept the officer's recommendations in the report as written. I'd like to outline my reasons for that. Essentially, I do accept that at present time there is no formal plans come forward from Highways England regarding that junction. I think we know that that junction is exceptionally problematic. The high volume of traffic entering and exiting the Sainsbury's site, the high volume of traffic going up and down the road is problematic, and I would very much like to see changes to that junction as soon as possible. My concern with permitting the applicant's request for the right turn to be included in that is that we might essentially preclude any amendments to that junction that Highways England have coming through. Personally, as much as I would like to see the site developed, I think we have to work with the existing infrastructure that we've got with the Sainsbury's site there that's very well used by residents, and ensure that we're not reducing the increased viability of usage of the site and safety of road users going to the site and traversing the area. So I'd like to propose the recommendations as drafted by the officers.
Okay, thanks, Councillor Jones. Any further comment from members before well, we'll look for whether Councillor Williams has a seconder, whether Councillor Jones has a seconder when we come to votes. But before then, Councillor Reddish.
Thank you. I'm a bit torn, to be honest, but having listened to the two speakers. I'm just wondering if there is any merit in going back to county highways and saying, get your act together, give us the proposals of what you're saying, don't think about it, you need to do it, and then delay this application until we've got those guidelines from the county. Because I think the developer might be slightly happier if we knew what highways were definitely going to do. And I think I would be happier if I knew that it was going to work or it wasn't, depending on the highways. Is that something we can do, or have we got to decide it tonight?
I was going to just ask our officer what she feels about that.
Well, yes, it's entirely up to the planning committee if they wish to defer the application or making a decision on the application, but there's no guarantees that the highway authority will be in a position to have finalised the design of the works, so that a decision on this application could be made within a reasonable time. We've delayed bringing the application to planning committee for some time now, while discussions have been taking place with the highway authority to see whether their plans progress and whether right turn can be designed into this site that's compatible with the works they're intending to do. But we're not at that stage yet. The highway authority are still far from in a position where they have committed to a design. A decision could be made tonight with the recommendation as set out, with the condition that prevents a right-hand turn. But in the future, when the highway authority have finalised their design, it may be possible for the applicant to come back and agree a right-hand turn, and the works, if highway works are needed to do that, at a later date. So my view is that a deferring of the decision may put this matter in abeyance for some considerable time, and the officer recommendation is to permit only with the condition without the right-hand turn. If you consider the right-hand turn should be provided, the recommendation will be one of refusal, because it could result in wider highway safety concerns as a result of the jeopardisation of the highway authority highway improvements. So that would be the recommendation if members wish to require that the right-hand turn is provided. The highway authority position is that in highway safety turn there is no issues associated with a left in and left out arrangement only.
Right. So I think it's, I mean, I would very much hope that already the developer is talking to the Highways Authority. I mean, it would seem absolutely crazy for these groups not to speak to one another about this. Let's just make sure we know where we stand. So really all of this, I think, does turn on condition 15, the one about the right turn access. Am I right, Mrs. Maltin, in saying that effectively we cannot remove this condition?
Again, it's a matter for the planning committee to decide whether you consider the requirements to provide the right-hand turn does not result in any wider highway safety concerns. If that is the view of the planning committee, then you can permit the application as recommended, omitting condition 15. But the officer view and the view of the highway authority is that the provision of that right-hand turn could jeopardise their plans to carry out wider highway safety improvements in the general locality of this site at the Enderley Street junction, and on the basis that could have long-term highway safety implications, your officer view is that that's not acceptable and the application should be refused on that basis.
Can I just ask one further question about this, which would be, were that permission to be given for the right-hand turn, would it not be the case that when the Highway Authority came back to do a major redevelopment, that permission would simply lapse as part of that redevelopment? In other words, that it would be a sort of temporary permission prior to the rejigging of the road, or is that not correct?
Well, I can only assume that the Highway Authority have taken that into consideration and have reached the conclusion that they would not be able to carry out the works that they intend to do if it was not compatible with that right-hand turn. They wouldn't have the ability to close up that junction, that turning facility. So I can't add any further than that. I can only assume it's been discussed, and the case officer has been in long discussions with the applicant and the Highway Authority, and will have explored that as an option.
Okay, and I just want, again, I just want to try and be very clear in my mind of what can and cannot be done in this regard. Could condition 15 be varied to say that there would be such permission granted until such time as the Highway Authority undertook major works in that area?
I think we would advise that we take the views of the Highway Authority into account to seek their input on that question. I'm not able to answer that. Right. So if you wanted us to explore that, then there could be a granting of approval subject to the inclusion of that or the omission of that condition, subject to the Highway Authority's views being taken into consideration.
Okay, those will be views on this issue of time. Councillor Jones, you need to unmute yourself again, Councillor.
I'm glad that you remind me. Just for my own clarification, I think probably would help with the committee in terms of the relationship to the entry to the site. Is the right-hand turn, does that have a relationship to where the entry point is? So I guess what I'm saying is, if the right-hand turn existed and that governed where the entry point to the site was to get into the actual gym facility itself, and then was later moved at a later point by Highways England, that would then not be the entry point onto the site, and would that essentially cause a problem because Highways England wouldn't be able to move the right-hand turn because it's of where the entry to the site actually is? It would require the developer to move the entry site as well, and therefore would preclude Highways England moving that if the developer didn't want to move that entry point.
Yes, I think that's a fair point. The right-hand turn on the submitted plans is directly opposite the one access into an egress from the site. At the moment, the site has two entry points, but one is going to be closed up as part of this proposal, and the one in the more southerly position is the one that's been retained, which is directly opposite this right-hand turn. So yes, the position of the entrance will have some impact upon where that right-hand turn could be. You couldn't move it in a very far in either direction without it being incompatible with that point of access onto the site.
So just, Chair, if it's okay, just to clarify, if we permit a right entry point to go across into the site, we would then effectively be stating that on any redesign, that right entry point would have to be preserved.
Yes, unless, and I don't believe this is the case, and I'd have to seek the Highway Authority's view, unless the Highway Authority could require the site operator to reposition their access point, and I think that is unlikely to be within their powers. I've never heard any any information to suggest that's something that they could do. So yeah, I think that's a fair point.
Thank you.
Okay. Again, I think we now I mean, it seems to me we've got pretty much a choice either to go with the recommendations as stated, or to, if we feel it's appropriate, strike recommendation 15. No, I don't really see that there are any further options that we have. I don't know. Did any member wish to comment before? First of all, I look for a seconder for Councillor Owen.
Yeah, good evening, everyone. My major concern on that junction that Councillor Williams informs us that Sainsbury's paid for is it hasn't eased the traffic flow situation at all, particularly going north out of the town. And whereas we've had the odd bus turning right into the old bus garage there, we're potentially talking of a lot of cars that would want to turn right. And until we got something definite regarding the highways situation, I can't say I'd be in favour of opening a right turn there at the moment. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor. Any further comments from members?
Also, I want to stay with the removal of 15, Mr. Chairman, because all of that is managed by lights that work. They work it from staff from their headquarters, whoever it is, and there's pedestrian crossing, and we've got the subway which nobody uses. It goes underneath the A34, but most people use the crossing. So it's all managed there, and I think I'd still like to stay as I am, because I don't think they'll make any difference. And in fact, on past record, and I hate to be, the highways agency will make it worse, because I'm arguing against myself, because they propose to let more HCVs turn right and go down Angular Street. That will alleviate some of the HCVs that come past my house in St. Martin's Road. So I may have to declare interest on that point. But I think I want to stay as I am. I think we should remove 15 and allow the right-hand turn and let the highways agency sort it out. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. So I think we'll go to a vote, but obviously everyone's heard Councillor Williams's proposal. It needs to have a seconder to go forward. Does it have a seconder?
I'll second it.
Thank you, Councillor Reddish. So what's been proposed and seconded is that we permit the application, but we strike condition 15, no approval granted for the right turn access, which de facto means that such approval has been granted. Okay, I'm going to take votes one by one on this, and I'll do them from the side where I've got my participant screen. So Councillor Williams.
With the removal of 15,
yeah,
please.
Yeah, so in favour. Councillor Jones.
Against.
Councillor Reddish.
In favour.
Councillor Northcott.
In favour.
Councillor Moffat.
Abstain.
Councillor Maxfield.
I think she's left the room.
I did. Yes, I did. I seem being kicked out and returned. I managed to hear it just very quickly at the end, so in favour. Thank you.
Okay. I think I've Councillor Owen. Sorry, I don't think I've had your vote, have I?
Against.
So where are we on votes, Jeff? I think please say if I haven't. I think I've made it.
Four in favour, Chair, 2 against and 1 abstention.
In that case, that recommendation is passed with the striking of condition 15. I do apologise. Every time that something happens with participants, the list jumps around, so I can't keep a firm list. So I'm trying my best to make sure everybody gets their vote in. Let us progress to item 5, where again I believe we have a speaker, Mr. Copestake. Is that correct?
Yeah.
If Mr. Copestake can be brought into the meeting.
Yes, I'm here, Chair. Thank you.
Excellent. You're a little bit faint for me, Mr. Copestake. I don't know if you can turn your microphone up. I can hear you, but it might be to your advantage to turn it up if you can.
Is that better?
It's about the same for me. I'm looking at the screen. Are members happy? Can everybody hear Mr. Copestake?
I can.
Excellent. So again, just very briefly, Mr. Copestake, I think is familiar with the rules, but I'm not sure if anyone else out there is not. So Mr. Copestake has 5 minutes to address the committee. They'll be timed by our clerk, and a verbal warning will be issued when 4 of the 5 minutes have elapsed, and that will be the sum total of Mr. Copestake's contribution to our debate. So on those terms, Mr. Copestake, I invite you to address the committee when you're ready.
Thank you, Chair. Members will recall that an earlier planning application was refused in March for a single reason, namely that it provided an insufficient level of on-site parking, thereby overturning the officer's recommendation to grant planning permission. Members' specific concern back in March related to a suggestion that a proposal of 14 on-site parking spaces would lead to an increase in car parking on the surrounding streets. In short, members wish to see more on-site parking. Since that March refusal, the applicant has taken on board members' comments and has worked with your officers in instructing a transport consultant to respond to the issues raised. The application now presented proposed a number of materially important revisions to that scheme. It proposes an increase in the number of on-site parking spaces from 14 to 17, to provide 22 secure cycle spaces, to remove the access gate in order to provide unrestricted access to cyclists, and finally to relocate the refuge collection point to a position adjacent to BETLEY Terrace. The revisions would retain the high-quality contemporary design of the proposal, which members supported in the previous scheme, and retains the number of dwellings to 22. The applicant does propose to build out the development themselves and to retain ownership of the property, renting out the apartments in order to ensure that they have control of the operation of the site, including how parking is allocated to their tenants and perpetually managed thereafter. The accompanying transport report provides robust justification to demonstrate why 100% car parking is not required at this site. It takes on board the government guidance, which emphasises that maximum car parking standards should only be provided where there is a compelling case to do so, and that sustainable forms of transport should be promoted through the design of the new development. The site, of course, is located within close proximity to Newcastle town centre and falls within easy walking distance to a range of shops, facilities and public transport options. In fact, the nearest bus stop is located just 75 metres away, and that's a significantly shorter distance than the government's recommended maximum distance of 400 metres for walking. Indeed, the provision of a cycle storage space for every household would encourage sustainable transport options to an even greater amount. The transport report also demonstrates that developments of this size and nature on average take up 58% car parking spaces. This would result in the provision of 13 spaces for this site. Nevertheless, the applicant proposes to increase the number of spaces to 17 across 22 apartments, and that results in a 77% ratio, and that's a significant exceedance of the average. Both your officers and the Highway Authority are satisfied with the justifications that's now put forward by the applicant, with the Highway Authority in particular confirming that the car parking restrictions on the roads within the vicinity of this site would further restrict the opportunity for on-street parking. Indeed, the nature of these apartments, being in such close proximity to the hospital in the town centre, mean that they are likely to attract tenants who wish to work in close proximity to the application site. Tenants would be made aware during the process of agreeing their tenancy whether a parking space can be allotted to them. In the unlikely scenario that a tenant wishes to rent an apartment with an allocated space and this is not available, the applicant would make them aware of alternative options to park their car in a convenient location nearby, and that includes directing them to permit schemes on BETLEY Terrace and the nearby Goose Street car park just a 4-minute walk away. In light of the above, it is clearly evident that the applicant has worked proactively with your officers and the Highway Authority to agree a solution to overcome your previous concerns, and I hope that I have provided you with the comfort to support this development, which will enable the applicant to build out the scheme without further delay. Just finally, in addition to the above, the applicant is agreeable to entering into a deed of variation to the original Section 106 agreement, and that's to ensure that an updated financial appraisal is produced prior to the development being substantially commenced. This would enable the district valuer to satisfy themselves with regards to viability, and that whilst ensuring the planning permission, of course, could be granted without undue delay. I would therefore respectfully ask members to grant planning permission in accordance with your officer's recommendations, and thank you for listening.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. Again, before I open this debate, just ask our officers if they have any comments to make on what's been said so far.
We have no further comments, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. So you see the recommendations in front of you. You've heard our speaker. I invite comment from members. Councillor Jones. You need to unmute yourself, Councillor Jones.
I was just trying to find the button. I remember when we discussed this previously, the previous time it came before us, and I remember my issues in particular were regarding the car parking and the management of car parking, and I think the applicants made substantive efforts to meet those issues that we'd raised. I'd like to commend the applicant, and I'm very pleased with the inclusion of car park management as one of the recommendations. So I'm quite happy to move the recommendations.
Councillor Moffat.
Yeah, I'd like to second Councillor Jones's comments, and it's great to see how they've worked together to resolve the issues that we've raised, and particularly into the number of cycle places as well that they've done. So great work. Really pleased with the outcome. I'd like to recommend.
Thank you, Councillor. I'll take you as seconding Councillor Jones's proposal. Any further comment from members? Councillor Northcott was, yep.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, I was one of the people that were sitting on the first time this appeared, and I'm pleased to hear that the applicant has been working to try and resolve this dilemma. Ideally, for somebody to expect a professional, if it's a professional apartment, and expect professional people to go shopping without a vehicle, and then to park some way off and transport that in the rain is probably unrealistic. But having seen the car park management scheme, I am more comforted and inclined to support this, Mr. Chairman, in line with Councillor Jones and Moffat's view. This is something that's going to crop up time and time again in the borough, in the town centre, where parking space is a premium, and we must be looking as a planning committee to make sure that we can canvass for full parking spaces when we can, because if we don't, we're going to, obviously it's going to contribute to more problems around the town centre. So I think, we were right before in terms of sticking out for more parking spaces, and I'm pleased to see that the applicant has responded to that in a pragmatic and practical way. Thank you, Chair. I will be supporting this application.
Thank you, Councillor. Any further comment from members? I see none, so I propose to proceed to a vote. So it's been proposed and seconded that this application be accepted. We'll go through again. I'll try my best to make sure we get everybody in. Councillor Williams, you for or against?
Against, sorry, permit.
Permit, right. Councillor Owen.
Permit.
Councillor Maxfield.
Yeah, permit. Thank you.
Councillor Jones.
Permit.
Councillor Moffat.
Sorry, permit.
Councillor Reddish.
Permit.
Councillor Northcott.
Permit.
I think Councillor Maxfield, who seems to be frozen. I think we can proceed because that number of
Yeah,
votes.
have me once, Chair. So I did say permit.
Right, excellent. So in that case, I think we can say that that passes NEMCON, and we can proceed to item 6. Now, am I correct in thinking there's a supplementary report to item 6, to our officers?
Yeah, there was a supplementary report published Friday, I think it was.
So I hope the members have had sight of that. Just ask Mr. Bromley if there's anything further to say apart from those 2 reports.
There isn't, no, Chair. Thank you.
So here, I think perhaps what we should be looking at is the colour here and the lighting. But again, I look for members' comments on the application. Councillor Reddish.
Do we actually have a sample of what goose wing grey looks like? I've got it in my mind, but I think perhaps we need to know what we're permitting.
I think I'm writing 6 fairly light coloured grey, isn't it, Mr. Bromley?
It is, yeah, a very light coloured grey. I have got a photograph of the site with, and the site has got goose wing grey buildings and 2 cranes on the site currently. So the applicant is open to a different colour, but because the site is predominantly has goose wing grey buildings and existing cranes, that's the colour that they've opted for.
Okay. So it's a bit like the background that is behind Elaine, is it?
I don't want to suggest that Elaine's walls are goose wing grey, but yes, similar colour.
Yes, I think it's a somewhat industrial colour, Councillor Ritchie, so we should be careful in that regard. But nonetheless, the question there, I suppose, is will it have a serious effect on the skyline? And probably a light grey colour is a sensible colour in this part of the world for the skyline. And will it jar with its surroundings? And as Mr. Bromley says, the rest of the surroundings are of this colour, so a different colour will probably draw the eye more than having something the same colour. But again, I look for members' comments.
Sounds fine to me. And I actually quite like Elaine's grey.
Councillor Owen.
Thanks, Chair. I can actually see THORP site from my back garden. So I'm quite used to seeing goose wing grey, and it wouldn't cause me as a resident any particular problem. And I must comment that this is a top quality company, in my estimation. Provide hundreds of local jobs. I wouldn't have a problem what colour the cranes were going to be perfectly honest. But as I say, I don't have a problem with goose wing grey.
Thanks very much, Councillor. That's helpful being within sight of the development, so to speak. Councillor Northcott.
Yes, Chair. I've got no issues at all with this. I'll be happy to propose that we accept this subject to the recommendations and permit.
Any further comment from members? Let's then proceed to a vote. I'm happy to second that from the chair. I'll stick with the screen this time because it doesn't seem to move as much. So, Councillor Jones.
Permit.
Councillor Northcott.
Permit.
Councillor Williams.
Permit.
Councillor Reddish.
Permit.
Councillor Owen.
Permit.
Councillor Moffat.
Permit.
Councillor Maxfield. It seems to have gone again.
Live. Shall we go some more?
I think that sounded like permit. So again, I think we can say that is clearly passed.
That's just saying it's recording.
Let's progress to item 7, which is a consultation item rather than a decision. Again, I'll just ask our officers if there's anything further to say. I rather doubt it.
No, there's nothing to add to the report. Thank you.
So always struck me as an interesting name, this road. I look for comment from members for as regards the recommendation. That is that we raise no objections to this development.
Move it.
Yeah, second it, move it.
Okay, so again, let's just go through
Move, Chair.
individually. So, Councillor Jones,
Permit.
Councillor Northcott. I think I could lip read you saying permit, Councillor there. Councillor Williams.
Permit.
Councillor Reddish.
Permit.
Councillor Owen.
Permit.
Councillor Maxfield.
Permit.
I can hear you, Councillor. You've got a very, very slow link. Councillor Moffat.
Yes.
Sorry, permit.
So that again is permitted unanimously. Now then, we're going to move on to item 8. Now at this point we have a public speaker, and I think it would be somewhat churlish, given that this speaker is going to speak to us on the following item, and they are very similar items. Could I suggest that we invite the speaker in to speak, and that she would be allowed to have 10 minutes if she wishes to have 10 minutes, because there are 2 items, but that we don't bring her in and out and in and out. That just seems to me a little bit churlish. Are members happy with that?
Agree.
That we take the 2 items together rather than sequentially.
Agreed.
Can I just say she's not in the waiting room?
Oh.
She's not there.
Oh dear. Right. Well, I think we must go on. After all, you know, the times have been made clear. So let's progress to item 8 then. And if we do find our speaker, she can address item 9 individually. So the mast on Clayton Road. Again, I just look to our officers if there's anything further to add to this item.
There's nothing further to add. A first supplementary report was published on Friday.
I look for comment from members. It's a long time since we've had a mast, so to speak.
Move it.
Move the recommendation.
Any further comments before we proceed to a vote? In that case, Councillor Jones.
Permit.
Councillor Northcott.
Permit.
Councillor Williams.
Permit.
Councillor Reddish.
Permit.
Councillor Owen.
Permit.
Councillor Moffat.
Permit.
Councillor Maxfield.
Permit.
I heard permit. I think Jeff nodded, so I think he heard it as well. So that again is passed unanimously. Can I, Jeff? Can I just ask you? Can you see our speaker in the waiting room?
No.
No. In that case, let us progress to item 9, which is another mast. This time in Chesterton. Again, I'll just ask our officer if there's anything to be added to the report.
Nothing further to report. Similar to the last item, there was a first supplementary published on Friday. Thank you, Chair.
Comments from members?
Move it, Chair.
Seconded.
Right. So again, Councillor Jones.
Permit.
Councillor Northcott.
Permit.
Councillor Williams.
Permit.
Councillor Reddish.
Permit.
Councillor Owen.
Permit.
Councillor Moffat.
Permit.
Councillor Maxfield.
Permit.
Again, I think that passes unanimously. That brings us to agenda item 10, application BETLEY Court, BETLEY. Again, I'll just ask our officers if there's anything further to add to our report.
No, nothing further to add. Thank you.
So I look to members' comment. It seems to me that this is the right thing to do. It seems rather churlish, in fact, to cause problems here where people have tried to keep a building standing, which I'm sure we all want to be kept standing. Are there any comments from members?
Move the recommendation.
Okay, let's proceed to a vote then. So, Councillor Jones.
Permit.
Councillor Northcott.
Permit, Chair.
Councillor Williams.
Permit.
Councillor Reddish.
Permit.
Councillor Owen.
Permit.
Councillor Moffat.
Permit.
Councillor Maxfield.
Permit.
Again, that I think is passed unanimously. We can proceed to agenda item 11, which is what's become an old favourite, unfortunately for us, Boggs Cottages. Again, I'll just ask our officer if there's anything further to add to the report. I suspect not.
No, well, there was a supplementary report published on Friday, which set out that we've had an offer date for the hearing of the 6th of October, which officers have confirmed is acceptable. I've not heard from the appellant suggesting that they wish for another date to be agreed, but we're still waiting to hear whether the inspector have confirmed that date.
Thank you, Mrs. Moulton. I think that it's sensible to go ahead with this. After all, it's a bit like an appointment at the doctor's, isn't it? If you pass one up, you're not going to get a better one. So
that's right.
It's a shame it's as late as it is, but at least it is a date, and I think we should be grateful of that. I would also propose that we keep this agenda item on the committee's agenda, and that it comes back again, not at the next meeting, but at the following meeting, so that we can have an update. Are members content with that?
Agreed.
Yes.
Agreed.
Yeah.
In that case, let's progress to item 12. Oh, sorry, Councillor Jones, you would speak.
Yes, just very quick, just to thank the officers and commend them for their hard work in getting us to this point. It's very much appreciated by the residents that I speak to.
Yeah, I think you speak for us all there, Councillor Jones. I mean, it will be it's nice to see light at the end of the tunnel, and hopefully we will get to the end of the tunnel. That must be our ambition, I think. Let us progress to item 12, which again is a sort of report item, land at Doddlespool. Again, just ask our officers if there's anything further to add to our report.
There's nothing further to report, Chair. Thank you, but I'm obviously happy to answer any queries if members have got any.
Again, I look for members if you wish to ask our officer about this item.
No, I think we need to keep the finger on the pulse here, because I suspect that November date will come and it will go and nothing will have happened. But
no.
Maybe I'll be wrong. But I think we need to be on top of it.
Yeah. Once again, I think, Councillor, that the thing to do is to keep this as a standing agenda item so that it doesn't slip beneath the radar, so to speak, especially, as you say, there is an important date towards the end of the year, and we do need to be up to speed when that comes along.
Yeah, I agree.
I think we are both aware that our officers have given us assurance that they are working on that. It's not going to be something that just sort of springs out of the blue, so that there will be a strategy in place by the time that comes along.
Yep.
In that case, let us move to agenda item 13. Now, at this point, this is as regards the leap at Silverdale. I was approached by Councillor Rout as a ward member who wished to speak on this item. I don't know, again, if I look to Jeff, is Councillor Rout in the waiting room? If she could be brought in, I think she is in. Can you hear me, Councillor Rout?
Yes.
Excellent. So what I propose to do is, normally speaking is for application items, but this seems to have raised quite a lot of debate, and I think as local member it's right that you should speak to it. So if I could suggest we have the usual speaker protocol for 5 minutes, and you can address the committee on those terms.
Ready?
Yes, whenever you are, Councillor.
Lovely. So as you'll have seen from the reports, there has been some ongoing issues with ASB at that park. And local residents believe that's been exacerbated by the presence of the tyre swing, which allows people to easily congregate. And the real concern is that the addition of 6 benches is likely to make that even worse. So a number of local residents have contacted me directly, and they've suggested that there's no need to add as many as 6 benches, and that a solution would be instead to replace the existing tyre swing with equipment that would be more suitable for younger families. So, for example, for some toddler swings, which would hopefully discourage ASB going forward, and furthermore encourage the use of the park by young families. I'm hoping that might be the shortest speech that you've had up till now, Chair.
Oh, thank you very much, Councillor. I think the input is very valuable. So thank you for taking time to come along this evening.
Thank you.
Just listening to that again, I look to our officers. I mean, what's being proposed there is changes as such. I mean, is that something within our remits or?
Yes, the committee resolved to encourage officers to pursue the provision of the benches, but if planning committee wish to amend their position and seek us to secure no benches or fewer benches, then that's certainly a decision that planning committee is entitled to make. But I would just want to draw members' attention to the views of the landscape development section, who considered that 6 benches are necessary for this development, and certainly there are requirements to meet the standards that the council have adopted for locally equipped areas for play, which is what this area is.
Thank you, Miss Moulton. Councillor Jones, I think, wishes to speak.
Okay. Like Councillor Rout, as the other local member, I've received quite a number of representations on this matter for quite a substantial period of time now, but acutely due to planning, it appearing on the agenda for today's meeting. It's been an interesting range of consultations from residents where residents have said that they would prefer to see no benches whatsoever, and other residents who have said they would like some benches, which I think reflects the diversity of residents on a typical housing development. I would just echo on from Councillor Rout's representation to committee that I think there is requirement for within the design, and I've read through the documents within the design specs that we use, there is requirement for some benches in order for family members who are there with children. Particularly, I know at least one resident of the estate contacted me to say that they'd like to take their children to the park, but they need to be able to sit down because they have a bad back. So I can understand that. But equally, the problems we have with ASB at this location, I do agree with Councillor Rout's statement that 6 benches are likely to exacerbate the problem. The problems we have there now, emphasised around the bucket swing or tyre swing, however you want to call it, does create a hotspot for antisocial behaviour. And I think 6 benches in that area is just going to exacerbate that. Adjacent to this area is the platform of the former Silverdale siding station, and that's an ASB hotspot purely because it's a large seating area. So ASB congregates where people can sit and hang out and do whatever they're going to do. So I suspect putting more benches in is just going to exacerbate that problem. I think it would be good to explore, perhaps with the developer and maybe with the police, about the provision of swings in the area, because as much as I would like to see toddler swings there, I think if the bucket swing was removed and replaced with 2 toddler swings, you're just going to get kids stood on that instead of sat in a bucket swing. So I think that's likely to also become a bit of a magnet. So I guess moving this towards something a bit more appropriate, because I wasn't too sure what we were being asked to do with this, and I understand now. My recommendation going forward, or I would move a recommendation that we would pursue perhaps 2 benches in the park area, and the additional 4 benches located towards the other green space that's further away from the park area towards the centre of the development. Failing that, I would recommend just 2 benches within the park area.
Thanks very much, Councillor. So I think the question I suppose that's in front of us is whether we wish to pursue the original statement, and Mrs. Moulton has drawn your attention to what the landscape development section say about that. Whether we feel, however, given the problems that have been encountered there, we want to go for a smaller provision, and whether in fact we go with Councillor Jones having 6 in different places, or whether we feel that 2 are just appropriate by themselves. Another question which I'll ask of Mrs. Moulton, I'm not sure this is the case, is the tyre swing is there, it's in place. Can we ask the developer to replace that with different equipment, or is that now something which is done?
We have no powers as the local planning authority to require the developer to replace that swing with an alternative piece of play equipment. That swing was approved as part of the design for the play area and was installed in accordance with the approved plans. There's no breach of planning control, so we can't require it as a local planning authority. We could pass on the views of the committee that there is a desire to replace that piece of equipment, and certainly there would be no planning reasons to prevent its replacement. The requirements, the LEAP requirements, the locally equipped area for play requirements, is about providing so many pieces of equipment and providing a variety of play experiences. So replacing that with something else which provides the same kind of play experience or something different to what's already provided within the play area would accord with the standards that have been adopted by this council, but as a planning authority we can't require them to do that.
Okay, but we could perhaps append a note saying that we think maybe a couple of toddler swings, and I take Councillor Jones's point, but if it was a separate piece of equipment with a different sort of gantry, the smaller nature of the thing may make it less attractive to stand on than the swing as is there at the moment. I don't speak of great experience of behaving antisocially with swings, so I'm not 100% sure, but it would seem to me that might be the right sort of thing to do. But I look for comment from members as regards numbers of benches, etc., etc.
I think I would be saddened if we reduce the benches to 2. But maybe there's a compromise. Have 3 benches around the play area and 3, as Councillor Jones has suggested, elsewhere. What I know you suggested 4. Just wondering if the balance is 3 and 3. Certainly have no problem at all with recommending that we try and replace the bucket swing. I know we can't make them, but we can persuade them. So I think my recommendation is that we say we'll persuade them to replace the bucket swing, and 3 benches round the play facilities, 3 elsewhere in the area.
If you go any further there, I mean, again, one of the things that concerns me here is we cannot, I assume, say that we want equipment placed outside the play area because the planning requirement was to put the stuff in the play area. Am I correct in saying that, Mr. Moulton?
Well, the benches associated with the play equipment, the siting of them there are directly in connection with the use of the playground. I don't know whether it would assist members if I explain that the 6 benches are grouped into 3 pairs of benches. So there is certain logic if one of the benches is removed from the pair, so you have 3 benches in placed close to the principal pieces of play equipment in the area. So yes, the benches are integral to the design of the play area, and certainly the expectation is that the benches are provided within that area, and certainly there'd be no basis upon which we could require the relocation of the equipment if that was what was, or a piece of equipment if that was being what may be suggested. The developer at a site meeting did indicate that if the resolution of committee was that they didn't have to provide all the pieces of equipment, then any money they would save, well, all the benches rather, any money they would save, they would contribute to the replacement of the swing. That is the attraction to the people undertaking antisocial behaviours. They would contribute that money to fund a replacement of that swing. So members may find that useful to note.
Thank you, Mr. Morton. Councillor Jones.
Thank you, Chair. Just to go back to my original recommendation then, I would like to recommend the 2 benches and that we take up the developer's offer of the money saved from the provision of 4 benches into replacing the swing facility on the site to something more suitable or less prone to ASB behaviour.
Now, I'm happy to second that from the chair. Councillor Jones, that seems an eminently sensible suggestion to me. But again, I'm willing to listen to others who have got perhaps better ideas. Councillor Williams.
I never indicated, Mr. Chairman.
Sorry, I thought I saw your hand go up. Maybe not.
No.
Any further comment from members? Well, let's take a vote on Councillor Jones's proposal. Again, let's just make sure we're clear what we're voting on. Councillor Jones's proposal is that we go for the provision of 2 benches, and that any monies that are saved from the lack of provision of the other 4 is put to the replacement of the bucket swing, or whatever you want to call that large swing, with swing equipment which is designed for much smaller children, toddlers, or however you're doing. Now, presumably those sorts of swings that have a sort of little crate that you put the child in as they swing backwards and forwards. So I've seconded that from the chair. I'll take a vote on that, and if that fails, we will progress the debate from there. So, Councillor Jones.
4.
Councillor Northcott.
4.
Councillor Williams.
4.
Councillor Reddish.
4.
Councillor Owen.
4.
Councillor Maxfield.
4.
Excellent. So again, that resolution then passes unanimously. Let us progress to item 14, which effectively is the same item, isn't it? Mainly, although there's a little bit more at the bottom. So breach of planning obligations, we've already dealt, I think, with the first item here.
No, the first item relates to the failure of the developer to pay contributions on the development next to the play area, but separate from the play area. Yeah.
Quite right, Mr. Moulton. Yes, I'm completely mistaken.
It is very close by, so but there's nothing further to add to the site, the Silverdale station, former Silverdale station and Goodyard. But there is we have heard from the county council on the other breach of section 106, the former Randall's site. They are looking into the breach of that obligation, but they haven't got any further information they could provide us at the moment.
Yeah, no, I look for comment from members on those 2 items.
Just keep putting the pressure on with Randall's.
Okay. So again, in that respect, Councillor Reddish, do you wish that item to come back? Because it won't obviously come back before this quarterly report again, or are you content with it to simply come back at that juncture?
If it comes back in 2 meetings' time, just to see whether there's any progress.
Okay, Councillor Jones.
Yes, this might be my my naivety on planning, but I'm just looking at the Silverdale sidings development as we know it, and I might be a bit confused. So that development's completed. The properties have all been erected, and I'm reading this very much as if that it's at a state that hasn't happened yet. I mean, please tell me if that's just my confusion, but my understanding is the development is complete.
Yes, and that it is complete, and certainly the triggers for the payment of the obligation, the financial contributions, is in the past. Certainly there was no intention to imply within the report that development hadn't been completed or even started. So yes, that is part of the issue, and we are in the process of identifying the extent of the costs that they owe the council, and we'll be pursuing that.
Fantastic, thank you.
So, given there are only 2 items here, do members wish this report again with both of these things, perhaps to come back, not the next meeting, but the meeting afterwards, as again a sort of watching brief?
Yes, please.
I'm seeing general nodding from around members there, so if we can do that, please, and have a supplementary report on this, or a state of play report on this in 2 meetings' time, that will be useful. That brings us to agenda item 15, which is again a report. It's on performance, and set out, I think, fairly clearly with lots of nice graphs. Again, thank you to the officers for making sure that the information is presented in a legible and comprehensible way. So it's always extremely helpful. And again, I look for comment from members. Councillor Northcott.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm really pleased with these figures. It shows that the planning authority is working well within its parameters and has improved exponentially over the last few months to the extent that it's in a great shape today. And I'm really proud of the officers' work across the team that's been able to affect this change. And I'm really happy the way the things are going, and I hope that we can maintain levels going forward to this degree or even exceed them. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor. Any further comment from members? Are we content that the report be received?
Great.
Again, I look at general nodding on the screen, so let's receive that report. Progress, I think, briefly to agenda item 16, which is, as you can see, an appeal which has been won by the council. I don't know if our officers wish to comment on this particular appeal.
No, I don't think it requires any comment, this particular one.
Again, members content to receive this. Anybody wish to make a comment upon it? In that case, let's just receive the a decision and move on to item 17, where there is a decision to be made. This is one for a grant to Clayton Hall Academy. Again, I don't think there's any further information attached to this report. Am I correct in saying that?
That's right. Yes, there's no further information to report.
I look for comment from members. Councillor Northcott.
Happy to approve this, Chair.
And second it.
Again, I suppose we should do this properly and do it councillor by councillor. So you can see the recommendation in front of you. Councillor Jones.
Approve.
Councillor Northcott.
Approve.
Councillor Williams.
Agree. Yeah.
Councillor Reddish.
Approve.
Councillor Owen.
Approve.
Councillor Maxfield.
Approve.
We do have Councillor Maxfield. Excellent. So again, that I think is approved. Oh, sorry, Councillor Williams. I miss you out. I do apologise. But you're in favour. I heard, yes. I think we can say that item is approved. And that brings us to our last item, which is urgent business as defined by the relevant section of the relevant act. I know of none personally. I look to our officers to see if there is any.
There's no such business.
In that case, I'm happy to close the meeting. Thank you very much for your attendance. Thank you to our officers in the background for getting me into this meeting, which was a bit of a marathon, but hopefully it's gone okay. And just a quick message for Councillor Jones. Did you get the little biography of the Australian councillor, which you may have had?
I did. The chap who is buried at, or his Commonwealth grave is in Keele Cemetery.
Correct, yeah.
From World War One. Yes, I think he was Australian for about 6 months or about 3 minutes before he joined the Australian regiment, but was originally from